What's up, Archons? I'm Flightless Pheasant, and today I'm going to be doing a Vault Tour review for the Las Vegas Vault Tour for 2024 that just wrapped up this last weekend. I'm going to go through all the decks I played and all the things that happened and all the exciting stuff, so hopefully that's going to be really fun. If you like this video, I have a couple others for the other two Vault Tours I've attended this year. And I expect to do something very similar for KFC, so if you're planning on going to Keyforge Celebrations this year, I'll be there too. Give me a big high five, give me a big shout out, and yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Our host in Vegas was the lovely Alexis Park Resort Hotel. They have a number of different spaces that can be used or rented for various purposes, and they had us in one of the Parthenons. I'm pretty sure we were in number 3. We were kind of past the pools all the way back down a hallway. It's a little secluded, but still a pretty nice place overall. And I'm really glad that they were able to host us for this. Day 1, and that was sealed as everyone else was settling into the event venue. I was unfortunately delayed by travel complications that made it impossible for me to arrive to the sealed tournament on time, which means I had to go straight into Second Amber. I did get my sealed decks and go through them and build something, but unfortunately, because I was a little bit late to the main tournament, I was not able to play in the main tournament, which is unfortunate because, as you well know, sealed is pretty much my favorite format. But everybody else was getting settled in and getting all of their stuff together, and I was dealing with a car rental that was taking a very long time. So I did end up getting my decks, and I did end up building something that I did play in Second Amber, but unfortunately I do not have a sealed record for this tournament because of my late arrival. So the decks I opened for sealed were pretty decent. There's actually some really exciting stuff in there, and I was really excited to get to play it. Although, unsurprisingly, after my travel delays, I was pretty exhausted as well. I only ended up playing 2 rounds of Second Amber. I won 1, I lost 1, and by that time it was not super late. It was like 4 or 5, and we were going for a food break, and I kind of just decided to take the rest of the day for myself. But let's look through the decks, see what we think here. So this is the one that stood out the most to me. This is Reaver, Goofy, Barora. Have you ever been to Barora? And anyway, so this one stood out to me because, well, obviously, Beanstalk. And there are 7 giants in here. None of them are, like, crazy, amazing, good giants, but, I mean, you got a Lifting Buddy in there, you got a Brick Nasty in there, you know, you're doing some stuff. So I thought that would be a really good pod, pretty much no matter what. I was like, I don't know what else I'm doing, but I'm definitely going to try to do this. And then, this was my only Geistoid pod, and it's probably okay, but Double Cursed Tomb did not feel good, and I decided that no, I don't really want to play with 2 Cursed Tombs if I'm also doing Brobnar Giants with a Beanstalk, because I feel like it's going to be way too easy for me to purge all my Giants, and then I can't go grab them anymore, and no, that's just no good. And then for my first game, I passed on this Untamed House, but I ended up circling back to it. But this Untamed House has a surprising amount of capture. You see 3 capture pips, Warfaline, Circle of Life, and Grave Pixie, which is not bad. I ended up taking this to get more Amber control, so that's why I grabbed it. It also had 2 Skeletal Murmooks, so that was more Amber control, which is really what I needed. After playing the first round and losing, I realized that I didn't have enough Amber control. But so I did sub this Untamed pod in, but you'll see I had like 2 other Untamed pods to choose from. Speaking of, this is Veki, the Firefighter of Mulbeer. Mulbeer. Oh man, the made-up words can be really tough sometimes. I don't mind it too much, but it can be a mouthful. And I took the Star Alliance pod out of this one for a couple of reasons, but 2 Retro Technician Lee is pretty good place to start. 2 Seance Scanners, not bad, and a Perimeter Alarm, with the basic idea being that if I had the Beanstalk in play, I could use Retro Technician Lees to recur giants who would interplay ready, and then I could use Seance Scanner or Perimeter Alarm to immediately use and fight with them. So I could kind of take a Brobnar turn even when I'm taking a Star Alliance turn. Which sounded good on paper, and it did kind of happen once, but broadly, this deck had a really hard time getting haunted, and some of the secondary mechanics really wanted me to be haunted, and it just wasn't happening. This Aquidon pod didn't really speak to me. It kind of struck me as pretty bland, and Dex Keyforge seems to agree. I did look at this Untamed pod for a while and consider it, but its Amber control was not as good as the other one, and by the time I got here, got to the point where I was trying to include an Untamed pod, I really wanted Amber control. This one is also pretty nice, though. 2 Reclaimed by Natures, 2 Dew Fairies. You know, it's got some pretty good Amber generation and recursion, and I always like having a little bit of artifact control because the artifacts in Grim Reminders are just unreasonably good, and so having a little bit of Amber control or a little bit of artifact control can be really good. But unfortunately, wasn't what I needed. And then the last deck was Albatany the Elderly. And this one, I did originally take the Aquidon pod from because it has a Tachyon Manifold. And I was like, if I can pull off Tachyon Manifold, that'd be awesome. It also did have a Permanent Record and a Generous Offer, which I like both of those together because it's really easy to just bam onto the same creature and steal 4 Amber. And it had 2 Belligerent Guards, which also seemed pretty good, but most of the rest of it is just kind of chaff Aquidon creatures. Historian Lee Darkin, Rumor Sower, Tutor Benrillo, Gemcode Vendor. You know, none of these are bad, but they're not all that good either, and it increased my creature bloat. And ultimately, I played my first game using this Aquidon pod, this Star Alliance pod, and this Brobnar pod. And I lost, because I didn't have enough Amber control. So I ended up dropping the Aquidon pod entirely, as I've told you, and I took this Untamed pod for a little more Amber control. And if you look at the other 2 pods here, you'll see there's also kind of just nothing here. There are 3 Skeletal Murmooks as opposed to the 2 that was in the other pod. However, the other pod also had 3 Capture Pips spread across its various cards, which seemed plenty good. There is a Key Abduction in this Mars pod. However, it just really doesn't have much going for it. I mean, 1 Target Unix Drill and 1 Scoop Up, you can kind of try to build your archives, but it's going to be a pretty slow build, and I just didn't see it going off. So I shelved it in favor of some of the other pods. After a night of rest, I got up for day 2, and we started getting ready for the Archon and Alliance tournaments. It was a really nice day. I got to meet up with Amber Meaties and Yo-Yo Milkworm, a couple of the other members of Team Visible Hand, and we took a nice photo in front of the Keyforge display. So everybody was getting their decks ready and getting excited. I was glad to have a nice night of rest so that I could grab my stuff out and go through them. I was playing my same Archon deck, so I was not playing an Alliance. But for those of you who don't know, we'll take a look at my Archon deck. So, my Archon deck, Gilpin the Triangular Vault Master, now the veteran of 3 Vault Tours, was again the deck that I chose to play for the Las Vegas Vault Tour. So this is my Hollowfest with 2 Brick Nasties and 2 Headhunters, where I play as Hollowfest as much as I can and go crazy with Brobnar. My Shadows has Too Much to Protect, plus 2 Bo Nithings and 2 Ronnie Wrist Clocks. And a hit and run, so I'm just stealing left, right, and sideways, as well as a Speed Sigil, which helps the Hollowfest go off a little bit more reliably. And then my Star Alliance is almost all board wipes, 3 Grand Alliance Councils, and a Quintrito Warp, plus a Stealth Mode for good measure to try to help me overcome those darn Grim Reminders key cheats. So Gilpin and I started off the Archon tournament pretty strong. We won our first game. But round 2, we got paired up with Drazcor, and Drazcor was playing this just absolutely degenerate deck with 4 in here somewheres, and an Ecto Charge, and a Grim Reaper. Like, it was just a really, really oppressive Geistoid house, and he had the answer to Hollowfest turn 1, and I did a Hollowfest turn 1, so he was able to purge my Harmolatoon, along with his Grim Reaper, which was unfortunate because I would have really preferred if Harmolatoon had not been purged, but it is what it is. And I feel like I kept him feeling like it was going to be a close game, but the truth of the matter was he was afraid of my Too Much to Protect, and I didn't have it, and so he ended up winning that game. But I feel like I was right there that whole time, just right there nipping at his heels. And then I go to round 3, and I end up against a Woe deck, which was really cool to see something that wasn't Grim Reminders, and I ended up winning that one, and that was another very close game. And then my last game was against a very classic Winds of Death Key Abduction setup, except I don't think he might not have had Winds of Death. It might have just been the Key Abduction. But he had a Mars house that was just really great at just cycling the whole house. And to make things worse, he scrapped a Mournful Barn Burner midway through the game and not purged, but made me discard my Holofest off the top of my deck. And as you can see, my deck velocity is not super high, so I wasn't going to be able to reshuffle in time to get to play it. So I ended up losing in round 4, meaning I went 2-2 again for results at a Vault Tour. But hey, I feel like that was pretty good. I got no complaints. Instead of playing Second Amber, I decided to go ahead and do a sealed pod since my first day of Second Amber hadn't gone very well, and I didn't think I had a very strong chance at Weekend Key Warrior. Figured I'd give a go to the sealed pods. So the deck I opened for the sealed pods probably has one of my favorite names of any deck I've ever opened. It's Ginger Sun, the Collector of Buttons, which I think is just adorable in like the most Keyforge way I can think of. But anyway, I opened up this deck to play in the sealed pod, and I'm going to be honest, it's not a great deck, but it is kind of cool in that it gets really good use out of Thalassophobia of all things. So Thalassophobia is considered kind of a terrible rare because all it does is make your opponent haunted, which normally isn't very good. However, this deck also runs a Dark Heart of the Forest, which makes haunted players skip their Forge a Key step, and a Reclaimed by Nature, giving me an opportunity to get rid of the Dark Heart of the Forest before it stops me from forging. But also, it runs Sibira the Medium and Spooky Charge, which I've seen go off several times, and is a way of getting around the restriction from Dark Heart of the Forest. Like, it was just a pretty darn good deck. I didn't see too much in the Star Alliance, although Dex of Keyforge argues that it's really great. I don't know. I mean, the Comm Officer Palix were pretty useful when I could get them to be useful. I couldn't get New Frontiers to work for anything. Just constantly whiffing on that. There was a Retro Technician Lee and a Missile Officer Myers. So there were some things going on, but, Star Alliance didn't really strike me. I really just liked that the Unfathomable and Untamed were actually making 2 rares from this set that are considered not very good, kind of work together in a really synergistic way. So I enjoyed playing this deck. I won 2 out of my 3 games, but you had to go 3-0 in order to win prizes. I walked away from day 2 with no significant prizes, and got prepared for Sunday, the final day. Sunday was the Menagerie tournament, and honestly, the more Vault Tours I do, the more I fall in love with Sunday. It's my favorite day. It's a very low-key day, very low stakes. Everybody who isn't in the top 8 is just playing for fun and having a good time with Menagerie, and I've been really, really enjoying Menagerie lately, especially at these tournament events. So another one of my decks that might look familiar to people who have seen my Vault Tour reviews before is my Menagerie deck. This is Sergeant Scarlet Toupee, the Glorious Time Lord. Pretty sure it's Toupee, but I may change that again. You'll recognize that this is my Menagerie deck where I have the Precocious Fragments with a Caspara, as well as Batriel of the Grey with the Disciple tokens. And I've talked about this deck before, but it's very, very flexible. The Sanctum strategy wants to build a big board and generate a lot of amber by reaping repeatedly with the Disciples. The Geistoid strategy wants to burst a whole bunch of amber using Caspara and Precocious Fragments Reap's abilities to generate just a crazy amount of amber really fast. And Brobnar wants to fight over and over and over again, ideally with Pelf, so that my opponent is losing amber the entire time. It's a very flexible deck, very good strategy, able to bounce back and forth. I lost my first game in the Menagerie tournament, so I knew I wasn't going to 3-0, but I figured I'd keep playing anyway. My mom was there with me. I didn't have a good photo of her this time, but she was there with me, and she did also play Menagerie. And we played against each other in round 2, and I defeated her. So she was 2-0 at that point, 0-2 at that point, and I went into my third round, and I played against a deck that was actually Unchained instead of Menagerie. And he had a really cool strategy using fish tokens, and he would just generate a bunch of them and keep pretty oppressive board control and make it so I wasn't able to fight. It was really interesting. It was a very good matchup, but I did end up winning that one. So I got some shield tokens for my wins in the Menagerie tournament. And then we were pretty much done at that point. With the Menagerie tournament over, it was time for the award ceremony, and I do want to give a special shout out to Amber Meaties, who was also a member of Team Visible Hand. He managed to top 4 in the Archon tournament, which is amazing. Best turnout for anybody in our team so far, I think. We did have somebody top 8 at Rochester. And with that all wrapped up, it was time to get headed home from the Vault Tour. And that was Vegas for me. I didn't really spend a whole lot of time on the Strip or go out and do very much because, to be honest, I'm not really much of a drinker or a partier, so I spent a lot of my time just basically at the hotel. But I did play a lot of Keyforge and had a lot of fun. I got to spend a lot of time with the people who are sort of in the middle to lower bracket, and I gotta say, Keyforge is so inviting. It's such a great community. I really love that I get to bring my mom along to these events, and she gets to have a good time too. And even though I didn't win very many prizes this time, Vegas was a blast. I strongly recommend it for next year. Hopefully they won't do it in the middle of the summer, because it was like 120 degrees, which was awful. But the games were fun. The venue was air-conditioned, so it wasn't that bad. I look forward to seeing you guys at KFC if you're going to be there. Look forward to seeing me there. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. But until then, later, Archons.